You've been hurt, haven't you? Not in a way that leaves bruises, but in the quiet kind of way that makes your heart flinch. When someone says your name with too much warmth. You've loved with sincerity and lost with silence. You've tried to be good, endlessly patient, endlessly forgiving. And yet, somehow, it's the ones who take that goodness who never return it. You've given, hoping the world would see your heart. But all it saw was an opening. They told you kindness would protect you. That love was the answer. That being soft made you special. But no one warned you that softness without strength becomes self-destruction. No one told you that too much empathy can turn into a weapon not against others, but against yourself. You gave too much because you feared being left behind. You stayed too long because you were afraid of being seen as heartless. And every time you tried to save someone, it was your own light that dimmed. This is not a lesson in cruelty. It's a reclamation of power. Because goodness, when it's blind, makes you vulnerable to those who see the world not as it should be, but as it is. And to survive in that world, to truly thrive, you must become both soft and unbreakable, the lion and the fox, the heart that feels deeply, and the mind that sees clearly. You've lived believing that being loved is the highest reward. But what if love, without respect, is just a cage lined with silk? What if the only thing standing between your peace and your pain is your own willingness to stop chasing approval and start commanding self-respect? In this space, we're not here to harden your heart, only to fortify it, to train your mind to stand guard over your tenderness, to teach you to stop apologizing for your strength. You're not too much. You're not unlovable. You're simply unfinished, waiting to remember who you were before the world convinced you to shrink. If these words reach you, if something in your chest stirs, then maybe it's time to begin. Time to rise differently. Stay close, breathe deeply, and listen with the part of you that's tired of pretending. Because what you'll hear next might change how you love, how you fight, and how you see yourself forever. And before we begin, if this message finds you, if you feel seen, understood, take a moment to follow this voice. Subscribe, not out of habit, but out of connection. Because maybe this time, you're not just listening, you're remembering. There's a quiet moment that happens after betrayal, the stillness where you sit staring at nothing, wondering how someone could look into your eyes, see all that love, and still walk away. You replay it 1,000 times, searching for the point where you went wrong. Maybe you should have been kinder. Maybe you should have been colder. Maybe if you just held your tongue, or given a little more, or cared a little less, things would have been different. But here's the truth you've never been told. You didn't lose because you loved too much. You lost because you believed love was enough to protect you. You thought that if your intentions were pure, others would meet you with the same purity. But people don't always see goodness as a blessing. Some see it as weakness, an invitation to take without giving. They mistake compassion for compliance. And those who live with open hearts often bleed for those who never plan to stay. You believed that being good meant being harmless. That forgiveness was the highest virtue, even when it destroyed you. But what if goodness without boundaries isn't virtue at all? What if it's self-erasure? What if the kindest thing you could ever do for yourself is to stop offering love to those who don't know how to hold it? Machiavelli once said, "It's better to be feared than loved if you cannot be both." But maybe what he meant wasn't fear. Maybe it was respect. Maybe it's better to be respected than adored. Because adoration fades when people grow comfortable. But respect lasts when they know you won't betray yourself for their approval. Strength doesn't mean cruelty. It means refusing to let the world decide your worth. It's the quiet voice that says, "I choose myself," even when it hurts. It's learning to see people not as you wish they were, but as they show you they are through their patterns, their silences, their actions, when no one's watching. Because the truth is, love without clarity is blindness, and blind love will always lead you into the same pain dressed in a different face. You've spent years trying to understand why people don't love like you do, why they leave when you'd have stayed, why they forget you while you still whisper their names in your sleep. But not everyone loves from the same wound. Some love to heal, Others love to fill a void. Some want peace. Others crave control. You can't change them, and you were never meant to. What you can do is learn. Learn to watch without absorbing, to feel without surrendering your center, to speak your truth without trembling. When you understand the difference between kindness and self-sacrifice, something in you begins to shift. You stop chasing those who confuse your presence with their convenience. You stop apologizing for needing reciprocity. And it's in that moment when you finally stop trying to be endlessly good that you become truly powerful. Because now your love has weight. Your silence has meaning. Your absence becomes the loudest sentence you'll ever speak. The world will try to make you choose to be soft or strong, kind or wise. But you can be both. You can love with tenderness and protect yourself with steel. You can open your heart and still guard your peace. The lion roars not because he hates the world, but because he remembers who he is. And you've been quiet for too long. Don't harden. Don't close off. Just awaken. See clearly. Love wisely. Protect your energy like it's sacred, because it is. You are not naive for believing in goodness. But from now on, let your goodness have edges. Let your love have standards. Let your kindness be chosen, not exploited. The truth is, the world doesn't need another person who gives themselves away. It needs someone who loves with discernment, who can hold tenderness in one hand and strength in the other. So breathe. Stand taller. The era of over-giving is over. What comes next is you unafraid, unbroken, and finally whole. You learned early that the world rewards those who smile through their pain. That silence keeps the peace, even when it kills your spirit. You learn to be agreeable to swallow your opinions, to stay small enough to be loved. Every time you said yes when your soul screamed no, a little piece of you dissolved. You called it kindness, but really, it was fear dressed as virtue. You thought peace meant avoiding conflict, when in truth, peace is built on the courage to speak. You gave your energy to people who only knew how to take. You believed that if you just loved harder, they would finally see your worth. But people don't change because you love them. They change when they're ready to meet themselves. And the ones who take from you without giving back, they don't stay because you're kind. They stay because you make it easy to consume without consequence. It hurts, doesn't it, to realize that some of the people you'd die for wouldn't even inconvenience themselves to keep you, that your loyalty became their comfort zone, that your forgiveness made them fearless in hurting you again. But you need to know this: you were never weak for wanting love. You were just misled into believing that love required your self-abandonment. Let me tell you a truth most will never dare to say. The world does not run on fairness. It runs on perception, on strength, on the silent balance of who values themselves enough not to bend too far. The illusion of goodness says, be kind and all will love you. But real goodness says, be kind, and when they misuse it, walk away with your head high. Because the one who can walk away with dignity holds the real power, not the one who clings. It's time to train your mind differently. When someone shows you who they are, believe it. When they pull away, don't chase, observe. Don't let the ache of rejection trick you into chasing what disrespects your spirit. Rejection isn't always punishment. Sometimes it's protection disguised as loss. The people who leave often create the space you need to meet the version of yourself that doesn't settle. You've been conditioned to see strength as coldness, but it's not. Strength is simply love that's learned how to choose wisely. It's smiling at someone you once begged to stay and knowing you no longer need them to breathe. It's realizing that your forgiveness doesn't mean access, that your heart can stay open, even if your boundaries are locked. When you begin to live like this with quiet conviction and a calm awareness, you stop seeking validation. You no longer need to prove your goodness. You stop needing people to understand why you left, why you changed, why you finally said enough. Because strength doesn't explain itself. It simply is, and the world feels it. When you carry yourself with unshakable peace, others sense it. They can no longer manipulate your empathy because they see you've outgrown the version of yourself who needed to be liked. You've become something rare, Someone whose love is no longer a negotiation, but a gift reserved for the worthy. When you stop playing small, something shifts around you. The wrong people fall away, not because you punished them, but because they can no longer feed off a healed version of you. The right ones appear those who see your boundaries as beauty, your clarity as peace, your quiet as strength. The Machiavellian method, in its truest sense, is not about deceit. It's about wisdom, the courage to see life without illusions. It's about learning that power and kindness can coexist, that you can be gentle without being naive, loving without being blind. So when you feel the urge to shrink, remember, even a lion knows when to rest, but he never forgets who he is. You can forgive and still protect yourself. You can love and still walk away. You can hope and still see clearly. Let the world call you guarded, it doesn't matter, because you know the truth. Guarding your peace is not isolation, it's evolution. And those who deserve your light will never demand you dim it to stay. There comes a point when exhaustion replaces heartbreak, when you're not angry anymore, just tired. Tired of explaining, tired of hoping, tired of giving love to people who only understand it when it's gone. You sit quietly, not because you have nothing to say, but because you finally see that your words don't reach those who refuse to listen. And in that silence, a strange thing happens. You begin to see people for who they are, not for who you hoped they'd become. You start noticing patterns instead of promises. You stop mistaking charm for care. You understand that some smiles hide intentions, that some "I miss you" messages are simply checks to see if your door is still unlocked. This realization isn't bitterness, it's awakening. The fog that once made you chase illusions begins to lift, and for the first time, you see how much of your suffering came not from others, but from your refusal to accept the truth. You were trained to believe that clarity kills love, but the opposite is true. Clarity saves love, it saves you, because to see clearly is to stop worshipping potential. It's to understand that people show you exactly who they are through the way they treat you when you have nothing to offer. Real love doesn't require blindness. It thrives in the light. Seeing people as they are doesn't mean judging them. It means freeing yourself from fantasy. Because fantasy is what keeps you chained to disappointment, replaying words that never matched actions, convincing yourself that maybe they didn't mean it, or maybe they'll change. You end up defending the very pain that's destroying you. You thought loyalty was love. You thought endurance was devotion. But loyalty without reciprocity is self-betrayal. Endurance without peace is punishment. You can be compassionate and still say, "This no longer serves my soul." You can love someone and still leave them behind if staying means losing yourself. When you train your mind to see clearly, life becomes quieter but infinitely truer. You begin to recognize the difference between connection and dependency, between comfort and peace, between chemistry and compatibility. You start to understand that some people enter your life not to stay, but to reveal the parts of you that needed healing. And once the lesson is learned, holding on only prolongs the ache. The truth is, most people don't betray you, they just reveal themselves. It's your illusion that breaks. And yes, it hurts, because you loved your illusion more than the person. But once it shatters, you begin to rebuild with wisdom instead of wishful thinking. This is where strength starts to grow in the ashes of what no longer serves you. When you stop blaming yourself for being too much or too kind, and start realizing that your only mistake was not seeing soon enough. The world becomes clearer, sharper, less forgiving perhaps, but more honest. And in honesty, there's peace. You begin to notice how differently you move. You no longer rush to explain your worth. You no longer panic when someone drifts away. You understand that losing someone who cannot value you is not loss, it's alignment. The ones meant for you will never make you question if you're too much. They'll look at your depth and stay, not because they need to, but because they recognize home when they see it. That's the paradox of awakening. It makes you gentler, not colder. You stop needing revenge. You stop needing validation. You just see. You understand. You let go. That's what emotional invincibility truly means. Not being unfeeling, but being unshaken. Not denying pain, but not living inside it. When you walk through the world with that kind of calm, people feel it. You no longer attract those who feed on your light, you attract those who bring their own. Because clarity is magnetic. Realness recognizes realness. And once you've learned to see people as they are, you'll never again trade your peace for the hope of being loved. Let this sink in. Not everyone deserves your story. Not everyone has earned access to your softness. Your energy is sacred. Give it only where it's mirrored, not merely consumed. And when doubt creeps in, when you wonder if you're becoming too guarded, remember this: a heart that knows how to protect itself can finally love without fear. Because love without boundaries isn't love, it's surrender. And you've surrendered enough. So breathe. Let the illusions fall away. What remains after the storm isn't loneliness, it's truth. And truth, my friend, is the beginning of freedom. There's a moment when you stop chasing love and start becoming it. When you realize that every time you begged someone to stay, you weren't really asking for them. You were asking for the part of yourself that you lost trying to please them. You wanted to feel whole again, not abandoned. You mistook attention for affection, validation for safety, control for care. And now you see it, you weren't asking for too much. You were asking the wrong people. You were told that love means selflessness. That to be good, you must give endlessly. But love without self-respect is a wound that never closes. You can't heal by overextending yourself into people who are allergic to depth. You can't save someone who uses your compassion as a shield against their own emptiness. You've tried that, haven't you? To be their light, to be their reason, to love them into wholeness. But no matter how much of yourself you poured out, their hunger only grew. Because love cannot fill what self-awareness refuses to face. There's power in choosing yourself not out of pride, but out of truth. The moment you decide, I will not chase, something sacred shifts. You stop being a participant in your own diminishment. You stop negotiating your worth. You begin to see that not everyone deserves your softness, and not everyone can meet your depths. Some people only understand love that comes with conditions, with games, with control. But you've outgrown that. This is where the Machiavellian wisdom becomes a mirror, not a weapon. It is better to be feared than loved, if you cannot be both. When you read it with a wounded heart, it sounds cruel. But when you read it with clarity, it transforms. Because what it truly whispers is this: it is better to be respected than adored. Fear and respect both create distance, one through intimidation, the other through reverence. And if you must choose the one that keeps your dignity intact. Self-respect is the highest form of love. It's the kind that doesn't beg, doesn't chase, doesn't shrink. It simply exists in quiet confidence. It knows what it brings to the table, and it's not afraid to eat alone. That's not arrogance, it's awareness. Because when you know your worth, you no longer barter your peace for companionship. You stop apologizing for being too much, because those words are always spoken by people who were never enough for you. The art of being emotionally invincible lies in mastering duality, to be both the lion and the fox. The lion stands tall, unafraid to roar when necessary. The fox observes, silent, patient, discerning. Together, they create balanced strength with subtlety, power with grace. To live this way is to walk through life with eyes open, heart steady, and soul intact. When you learn to embody both, manipulation loses its power over you. You see intentions without resentment. You hear lies without reacting. You understand that most people speak from fear, not truth, and you refuse to take it personally. You don't need to expose anyone. You simply step back, smile softly, and let their actions reveal what your intuition already knew. You begin to notice how light you feel when you stop needing to prove your goodness. When you stop over-explaining, over-justifying, over-loving. You realize that silence is not weakness, it's mastery. Because silence makes others meet their own reflection. It forces them to confront what they tried to project onto you. And those who once took you for granted suddenly feel the absence of your warmth like winter. This is your rebirth. The moment your pain becomes your teacher. The moment you stop fearing loss, because you finally understand that anything you lose by being real was never yours to keep. That's freedom, the kind that cannot be touched by disappointment. And it's from that freedom that real love finally finds you. Not the kind that drains you or confuses you, but the kind that recognizes you, that speaks your language without translation, that doesn't demand that you prove your worth to stay. Because once you learn to love yourself fiercely, others either rise to meet you or fade quietly into the background. So when you wake tomorrow, don't aim to be kind. Aim to be clear. Don't aim to be loved. Aim to be respected. Because clarity is love in its purest form. It's love without illusion. It's the kind that says, I see you as you are, and I still wish you peace, but I choose myself. And that choice, again and again, is how you become unbreakable. When you finally reach that quiet place inside yourself, the one untouched by approval or rejection, you'll understand. You'll see that peace was never found in being loved by others, but in learning to love yourself with unwavering loyalty. You'll stop waiting for closure from people who never knew how to give it. You'll stop seeking permission to shine. You'll breathe easier because your worth will no longer depend on whether someone stays or goes. You will still love deeply, freely, beautifully, but differently now. You'll love with eyes open. You'll give without losing yourself. You'll forgive without forgetting what you've learned. Because emotional invincibility isn't coldness. It's compassion without self-destruction. It's knowing that the truth, no matter how sharp, is always kinder than illusion. There will be moments when you falter, when the old patterns whisper, maybe if I try again. But you'll smile softly, remembering how far you've come. You'll no longer chase what runs or beg what withholds. You'll simply return to yourself calm, grounded, unafraid. Because the lion in you no longer apologizes for roaring, and the fox in you no longer hides from wisdom. This is your power, quiet, steady, undeniable. You've trained your mind not to be cynical, but to be clear. You've taught your heart not to close, but to discern. You've turned pain into presence, and from that place, no betrayal can break you again. If these words stayed with you, if they echoed somewhere deep, take a moment to honor that. Subscribe not for me, but for you, because you're choosing to remember your strength again and again. Share this message with someone who's still trying to heal in silence. Let them know. Truth is not cruelty. It's love, finally telling the truth.